Good morning, everybody. Well, we're last weekend before Christmas. You ready? Well, we'll see. Hi, everybody. How are you? Musical icons. Your favorites revealed. Well, maybe I'll get lucky and mention a couple of yours, but I will mention a couple of mine and which ones changed my life. Now, that is a pretty odd statement, right? Like, how could a musical icon change your life? You sound like a little kid. Oh, Mickey Mantle changed my life because he hit that home run, right? The Mick. I'm not even a Yankee fan, but there are artists that you make your own. You adopt them like teenagers adopted the Beatles in the 60s. And speaking of icons, a very happy birthday out there to Frank out on the left coast. He's a terrific guy. He's had some health issues for quite a while now, and he smiles and grins and bears much more than I think any average guy could. So happy birthday, Frank. And Frank was a great guitarist and musician. So he'll understand when, I say there are bands out there that just resonate with you. Whatever it is, I'll give you one that resonates with me, and they're not the most famous band. They had their heyday in the 80s and late 70s, Squeeze. I think Squeeze, the quintessential British band with clever British lyrics, never quite made it in America, although they've had some success here. But they are just, to me, a very, very good band. They've changed lineups, but Difford and Tilbrook pretty much are Squeeze. Difford is the lyricist, and Tilbrook writes the tune after Chris sends him the lyrics. And it's worked that way for years, since the early 70s, actually. And they just, their music, I'm not going to say it speaks to me, but it's very pleasing to me. I like the offbeat riffs that Tilbrook uses in his songs, the clever lyrics that Chris puts down, very British. And I like that. It was a continuation of the Beatles for me. In fact, I remember when I was in my early 20s, I remember a Rolling Stone cover, maybe 1984, that Difford and Tilbrook were the new Lennon and McCartney. I remember that. And all I had known really was Tempted at that point, the song that Paul Carrick sang lead on. But, I just always thought they were a tremendous band. They're a good live band, too. And, my early memories were with the Beatles. I became a Beatle fan when I was about 7 or 8. I think I told you the story. And from there, I went to being an 11-year-old who sat on the stoop in Brooklyn with my sort of boom box. It didn't have stereo speakers. It had one speaker in the front, the big round one, set in encased, and it was a Panasonic cassette deck, and 8 double D batteries, the deal, an electric cord if you can plug it in. And I'd bring it out and I'd listen. I remember Brooklyn, the station I listened to was 99X, which was the pop rock. NEW was the deeper tracks, and they played the long PLJ, played the longer tracks, like a Hey Jude or something. 99X, 3 minutes and under, pretty much like ABC was the radio in the 60s and 70s. And I just any song that came on within a couple of notes, I could tell you what song it was. I made my own cassette tapes, um, meticulously waiting to hit that pause button, and I got a kick out of that. I loved it. I loved it. I was always really into music, and I would blame the Beatles for that because I don't know if I didn't become such a big fan of the Beatles, I don't know if I would have been that into music. I don't know if I would have become a writer. I don't know if I would have ever played in a band. I don't know. All I know is that I saw her standing there. It was the first song that I ever remember really liking. Now, I remember songs, I remember being 7 maybe, and my father in the kitchen, I guess he was making coffee. I don't remember my mother or sisters up, and Mrs. Robinson was on the radio. I remember my father was listening to the radio, and I remember White Room. I remember Spill the Wine by Eric Burden. I remember Band of Gold by Frida Payne, The Rapper by the Jaggers, because my aunt, who was 16 at the time, lived with us for a time, and she was listening to the Jaggers and stuff like that. So I heard it in the house, even though I was young. And I got into it. I got into it, the music that was of that day because of my aunt. My parents really weren't listening to that stuff, although I remember in the car, Paul Marriott's Blue is Blue. I remember that song being on in the car. I remember Zager and Evans in the year 25, around 1970. So, yeah, I was 9. So I remember starting to understand the songs that I'd like back then. And then as time went on, I had eclectic tastes. But for the most part, I just love music, like most 13 and 14-year-olds do, you know, because you're starting to notice girls and, all of that, I think, comes into play. Listening to music, liking girls, starting to get into your teenage years. I think that really hits home with you and it shapes you into what kind of music lover you're going to be. Some people don't love music. They could drive to work, they could listen to talk radio. They don't have to put music on. I'm someone who has music on from the time I get up in the morning to the time I go to sleep. Now, I would listen to sports radio, don't get me wrong, in the car or a game. But for the most part, music is always on. Just when I get up actually in the morning, I put it on. I'm in a bathtub, it's on with my big speaker. I put it in there, Bluetooth speaker from my iPhone. I'm just a music crazed nut. And it does something for me. I don't know, it always relaxed me. And I always liked all different kinds of music. I remember in the late 70s, I liked Shirley Bassey's song Goldfinger. I liked the James Bond movies, but I liked the song. I liked stuff that other people didn't like. I liked very eclectic stuff. Like I did enjoy all different types of music. And I don't know if that was just me. Oh, it was because I didn't hear it in my house. My father wasn't the kind of guy to have the music on, and my father was a guy from the 50s. I think he liked the 50s. I don't even think he liked Frank Sinatra. My father was an odd guy with music. I do remember him playing Loves Me Like a Rock in the car in 1973. I think he liked that song. But I remember always bothering him in the car to put on my type of music. He would be listening to WMCA, the Good Guy Radio. He'd be listening to talk stuff, Barry Farber, all that shit. He was into that. I, you know, I was into music. But it does change you. And now at Christmas time, it changes you twofold. Because if you really like music, Christmas is a special time because you can love Christmas songs, right? But you're not listening to them in May for the most part. Maybe some people do. But you can really love Christmas songs, and maybe once in a while you'll throw a song on. For the most part, it's seasonal. Maybe in October you start Halloween, you start putting that stuff on. But maybe that's why we love it so much. It's like, you like decorating. You're not going to put Christmas lights out June 1st. So maybe you really get into it because it's once a year and you really appreciate it and you miss it because it's not around. So I think that's why Christmas music is so special, holiday music to people, because it's really not played other times of the year. You're not going to put the radio station on and hear, you know, any Christmas music, Brian Setzer, whomever. You're not going to hear it. Christmas time, you hear it. In the stores, you're not going to hear it. So you really welcome it more so than any other type of music, which you can play year round and it's acceptable. If you're in the car going on a road trip with your buddy and you put, you know, Andy Williams Christmas CD in or Apple Music, whatever, your friends are going to say, "What are you listening to?" Right? If you do it in October, November, they may say, "Oh, put something else on," but they're not going to say, "Why are you listening to that?" It's Christmas, so we're allowed to like certain things at different times of the year, and I always believe that. I always thought that, and I enjoy Christmas because it's like a reboot. That Christmas music to me is you turning off your computer for the previous 9 months in October and rebooting the holiday season, maybe reacquainting with friends, Christmas cards, whatever. You're rebooting. The summer has ended, and it's time to reboot up until January. And I always believe that. I always thought that's how our minds worked because when we were younger, Christmas was always special, right? You probably don't remember what you ate when you were 15 years old on July 4th. You can guess it was a hot dog and hamburger, maybe corn on the cob, but you can remember what gift you got when you were younger because, or the dinners which your mother used to, whether it was the seven fishes or whatever you guys did on Christmas Eve or Hanukkah or whatever. It's a point that you can reference. And I think that people love being able to make an excuse for what they're doing. Now, interestingly enough, at my age, big news is the Rolling Stones canceled their 2026 tour. And I think it was Keith Richards that did it. They do have a new album coming out, but they decided to cancel the tour because Keith Richards, his inability to commit to it. That's what he said. Now, the tour was never officially announced, but now any plans that they had is scrapped. Their touring pianist, Chuck Leavell, who's been with them for years, said that the group has just finished a new album that was produced by Andrew Watt, who produced Hackney Diamonds album a couple of years ago, which actually did very well. And Richards just wasn't able to commit to the tour because of the rigors of it. He has a history with arthritis. He's changed his style of playing. And he recently played 3 songs in New York, but it's not the same as a tour that's going to span 4 months. So, and at his age, I just don't think he's looking to do it. So they may decide to tour in 2026. What happens is, Keith Richards cancels the tour and then gets bored and says, all right, let's do it. And maybe not 4 months, maybe you'll do a month tour. Because usually if you're doing a tour that's fairly big, you're hitting the United States and England and a couple of other countries. And if they're releasing a new album, generally speaking, you tour for that album to get the PR out there. So he's probably hurting. Arthritis, it's not only about not being able to play without pain. It tires you. You might be on medication, and he is in his 80s now. So he probably, Mick Jagger, I think he'd wheel out there with a wheelchair. I don't think Keith Richards wants to do that anymore. It probably, a 4-month tour. I'm sure it's very hard. And I don't think these guys are coking up anymore or being able to get through it with drugs. So it's grueling. Or sometimes you just say enough is enough. Sometimes you just don't like how you sound anymore. Being in a band is for teenagers. Some teenagers are 80, but it's for teenagers. It's for your gang, your guys. And usually you outgrow it unless you're making millions of dollars out of it. Some people just like the idea of playing at a club for 500 a night or whatever. That's fine. Cover bands and stuff. But for the most part, after a while, you have other commitments. You may have grandchildren you want to spend a little time with. You're 82. You start to wonder how long you're going to be here. And you want to miss all the time, 4 months on the road without your grandchild's not going to be following you around. So I could see where it would become burdensome. So that changes my perspective. And I was a big Beatle fan, but I liked the Stones as I got older. But, a band that was embarked on my youth. I'm old now if they're retiring, I'm officially old, which I feel half the time anyway. But every time someone who I loved as a youngster or a younger guy passes or retires, wow, I must be old if they had to retire. And that's how I look at it. So your musical icons, your favorites are revealed as you get older. As you get to a point in your life where there aren't as many around. And you realize the world has changed. You see, that's what happens when your favorites aren't around anymore and you really don't care what else is being played. You've kind of lost your sense of direction, your comfort zone. It's nice knowing your band is still around because that means you are. If I hear Tears for Fears still putting out a CD, well, it's still 1985 for me. And our icons mean a lot to us, not only when their song is on. It represents that there is still youth left in our souls. And when we start having the puzzle fall apart before our eyes, we realize then that can't make it out anymore. That happens. So you realize that your musical icons were there for a reason. It's like people that come in and out of your life. If you possibly were friends with everybody you met, you'd have 10,000 friends. Think of all the people you met in your life. Think of the people in high school that you said, oh, we'll never lose contact. You haven't seen them for 40 years. Because that's life. People come in and out of your life for a reason. And so do musicians. How many of you loved the song 30 years ago and now you don't like it? A song you loved as a teenager, you'd play and play and play. And if I would have asked you back then, you think you'll ever hate the song? No, and now you turn it off. You don't hate it. You just don't want to hear it. You don't like it because it represented something back then. It doesn't really represent anything now because so much water is under that bridge from the time you were 18 to now. Other things have flooded your mind, other musical genres, other artists. Things replace things. For years, Sgt. Pepper was rated the #1 album by rock and roll historians, Rolling Stone magazine. Now it's not, because in 60 years, other things have taken its place. Think about it. Is penicillin as good as Cipro or some of the antibiotics now? No, because people have improved on it. The sound that the Beatles had, people have improved on now. The technology is different, and there's always someone that comes along that might be better. It might take 50 years sometimes, but generally there is. And now Sergeant Pepper and Revolver and all those are in the top 10, top 15 now, replaced by newer artists because we listen to music differently. Our icons become less iconic and more human, especially when they die, because they're not our icons anymore. They're just like me and you, they just have more money. Because I'll tell you, in Hollywood, there are no more Hollywood stars. Back in the day, you had Katharine Hepburn on the big screen, Spencer Tracy. You didn't see the Inquirer with her with hair curlers in a Target. You saw her glamorous on the screen every couple of years with a movie. Now they're in our house more with streaming than you see your uncle. You could put them on 24/7. Hey, Ira, there are no more Hollywood stars. Back in 1950, when uh, Cary Grant was big, you think you saw a picture of Cary Grant in a bathing suit with a potbelly on the beach? No, you saw him in a suit looking debonair. That's or maybe on a TV show. Now, Twitter and all this, you get pictures of these stars that they're out of shape before they start working out and all that. So there's no more Hollywood stars. They're more like you and me. They just happen to have a cool job. When musicians die, they're no longer those idols. They're just another person that died like we will. And we get disappointed. It's like I tell you guys, I haven't said this in a long time. You know why guys fight with their fathers? I'll tell you why. Because when you're 6 years old, he's the strongest guy. He could beat Muhammad Ali. He could hit better than Mickey Mantle, blah, 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 blah. Then when you're 13, you realize, no, he can't. You blame him for lying to you. You're the one that built the pedestal for him. But now you're mad because he can't do everything that you claimed he could do. You're almost embarrassed that he's not this Superman that you invented. So you don't like it. Then when you get older, you respect him for just being your dad. But in those years that you felt he lied to you, he's not this idol. You were the idol maker. He never had a chance because you built it uh, on a house of cards and it came crumbling down as soon as you got a little older and realized that idols really don't exist. That was all built up in your mind. If daddy is the strongest guy in the world, how could the boogeyman hurt me? When my son used to say the boogeyman, I wouldn't lay with him because come in the room, I'm scared. If you lay with him, you're agreeing there was a boogeyman. You are agreeing there's something to be afraid of. Right? You're right. I better stay with you. You have something to be afraid of. Does that think about it? You know why we need idols? Because we need to feel there's something better. That's why people join Knights of Columbus, hierarchy. I can reach to be a third degree knight. Structure, power in groups. You feel wanted. You have a group behind you. And sometimes you realize you don't need that. Nice to say hello, but I don't have to hang out with you. I'm fine by myself. And that's what happens when our favorite actor or actress dies. We don't watch that movie in the same light anymore. They're not the same. Why do you think when someone dies, all of a sudden, when Michael Jackson died, his streaming, his music, when I guarantee you, all Rob Reiner's movies now, when Harry Met Sally, A Feel Good Man, all these movies, they'll be binge watched. Why? You saw them already. Because he died, you have to watch it again? Is that going to bring him to life again? No. It reminds you that it's okay. He's still alive because you're watching it. If you're looking at him on the screen, he's here. That's what we do. We build a world around us so we don't have to cry. But what happens is if you build a world around you, if you go into a tube and cry, eventually you're going to drown in your own tears. There comes a time you don't cut yourself off from everybody. You get out there and get bruised up and you get resilient. You go out and you get that first base tan and you burn a little so you can get really suntan in the summer. Always a little pain, but it outweighs what's to come if you don't face it. You know, when I started writing songs, it was an accident, a happy one. I played for thousands of people, 9,000, 10,000 in Daytona. And when you hear them cheering for you, you almost buy into the hype that you are an idol until you realize that you're not. You're just someone's good time for the evening so they can escape. They can really care less about you. They care about them, and they're using you to feel good. Right? So, with this holiday season here and Christmas in a few days, I will tell you this much. It's okay to be sad during Christmas. You wouldn't believe it if you put Hallmark on and in stores and everybody's smiling like happy little idiots. You have to. It's the law. You have to be smiley at Christmas. You have to be in love and everybody has to be happy. Bullshit. Be you. You don't owe anybody anything. You owe you. Because the bottom line is you're the one that has to answer to yourself. And once in a while, if you live right, you'll come up with the right answer. And the person deep inside you will say, no, you didn't try to get one over on me. Then you can look in the mirror and be happy no matter what you do. Thank you, Ira. Ira had a rough holiday. He lost his mother in law right before Hanukkah. And a wonderful woman. And he's always going to remember this Hanukkah. And it won't be for a gift. But yet it will be. The gift of friendship. See, Ira will remember that Hanukkah was pretty cool. Not because my mother-in-law passed, because I realized how many friends I had. I would take friends over gifts any day. You're welcome, Jen. You're very welcome. I hope you're doing well. Jesus freak Jen. Hey, Mitch. So musical icons, they are a dime a dozen. Because from the time you were 10 until now, probably your favorites have changed a bunch of times. They're still the same. You listen to a song from 50 years ago, I guarantee you, if you stream that song, if it wasn't re recorded, it's the same song. So why do you feel differently? Because you've changed. That song sounds the same. You're the one who changed. Your perception is different now because you've heard a lot of other music and you're older. It's not so cool to hear Sexy and 17. I remember Brian Setzer told me, he said, I stopped doing Sexy and 17 when my daughter turned 17. And I said, really? He said, yeah. And that's what music does to you. It can actually make you realize something. It made him realize that he was a father of a 17-year-old and that it's not appropriate. So what happened? He grew up. A song that he wrote that he made probably the money to put that kid through college. He had to discard it. I guarantee you he loved it when he wrote it. You don't play it anymore. I guess you don't like it so much. Why? Things change. And we have to have the foresight to change with it, or we get stuck and left in the dust. What commercials, Jen? Commercials on here? How do you think I make my 2 cents? So, everyone, enjoy your weekend. Oh, do they? Really, Jen? What are they thinking? Enjoy your weekend. I'll see you before Christmas, I promise. I'm not sure when, but I will. And you guys, hang in there. Life is tough, but you're tougher. Take it from me. I'll see you soon.